Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We have one Game 7 to discuss. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We have two Game 6s tonight, so potential for Game 7 on Sunday, which will be the same day, ironically, as Game 1. We're not doing the NBA thing, Russ, where they're like starting the second round series way before the first round is completed. They're, same day, that's fine. I mean, building.
Yeah, I think it's probably because of what the Garden may have event-wise, too.
Yeah, the Knicks were able to beat the 76ers, so MSG is going to be booked at least for the second round, and maybe for longer, depending on how the Knicks and how far the Rangers go. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So, speaking of the Knicks, a lot of times we talk about in sports, and you and I are big on this, don't give other teams bulletin board material.
Right.
Well, Paul Reed of the 76ers did just that by saying, we wanted to face the Knicks because they were the easier team. Well, not only did you lose the series, but you lost it at home. It's just a dumb thing to do in this day and age. I get it. Sometimes, athletes want to, pump it up, and that's how they get themselves psyched up. But it's just, remember, you're facing a bunch of guys that are just looking for a reason to say nobody believed in us or we're going to shock the world. We hear all this stuff, right? So they did that, and they lost. So my recommendation is, in any sport, in anything, don't be like that.
In other words, shut your bleeping mouth.
Yeah, just play.
Yeah. I mean, I know that last year, the Panthers used it as bulletin board material. We want Florida, which I can't remember whether that was a chant at a Leaf game or what.
It was a chant at a Leaf game,
right? Which okay, they were up 3-1,
right?
Game 5 in Toronto, so. I don't remember, and I was at that game. I don't remember the crowd chanting "We want Florida" because they lost that game. Yeah. They lost to Tampa, and then they went back. Then they went back to Tampa for Game 6. So I don't remember when it happened, but they used that. It may have been late Maple Leaf Square. That's probably what it was. It may have been Maple Leaf Square, and they had the mics out there, and they were chanting after Tavares scored the game winner in overtime. And they used it as motivation. Anybody in their right mind last year, after the Bruins had the best record in league history, would have been chanting "We want Florida," because Florida was an 8th place.
That's fair too. Yeah.
So I mean, okay, were they right to use it as motivation? Sure. Anything you can use as motivation, knock yourself out. But when it comes to team officials and team players, shut your friggin' mouth. That's the rule. So yeah, okay, let's get the show started. Hello. Oh, we got and we're bringing Jan onto the show. Hey, Jan, just give you a minute here because of the Knicks winning over the 76ers. I know you're a big Knicks fan, and
I mentioned the Paul Reed thing, so I brought that up.
Yeah, I'm not a Knicks. See, that's the funny thing is I'm a Celtics fan, but I'm not a Knicks hater. So it's like, I mean, that being the potential Eastern Conference final, and granted, the Knicks have to beat Indiana, and the Celtics have to beat who are the Celtics playing? It was Indiana. Indiana beat.
Not over yet. It's Orlando, Cleveland. It's
Orlando, Cleveland. Okay, so they'll be the favorite, obviously.
Well, they're a favorite straight through in the East right now, anyway.
Right, they're the top seed. But I would like to see it, and also I would like to see if Porzingis comes back. The former Knicks first-round pick.
I like Porzingis.
Right, but that would give that series a potential whole different aspect. But does it give you a bit more juice that they beat the 76ers, and then maybe next year you get Joel Embiid as a Knick? Or because there's always
I don't think they're getting Joel Embiid as a Knick, irrespective of what happened here.
Right.
Look, it's a great win. A couple of things. So first of all, their rotations are crazy, right? They played 7 guys last night, which, if you look at the minutes, is insane. Now, part of that is obviously the loss of Julius Randle, and everybody can talk about, they're better without Randle. No, they're not. I mean, you can say what you want. He was a ball hawk, but he was having an all-star season. he would have added another dimension to that team, lengthened the lineup, lengthened the roster. So saying that people who say Randall being out is a positive basically need to get their head examined, because I don't think they know what they're talking about. They're just viewing it based upon what they've seen last year and not necessarily looking at it. Losing Bogdanovich is actually a decent loss. He wasn't having a great series, but he gave them minutes. He gave them 3-point shooting, which was another component that they needed. And he also extended the roster. So Tom Thibodeau is going to have to start playing other guys. Alex Burks is going to have to start getting some minutes. He didn't play Precious Achiuwa yesterday, which kind of shocked me a lot because he had been using him a lot periodically. So it was a little surprising as to what happened, the fact that they didn't use him. So it's only going 7 guys. Mitchell Robinson played, obviously, and then McBride, who didn't have a great game, had a couple of big threes. But
team manager, somebody.
Yes, seriously, bring back Dick Barnett or somebody like that, right, Russ? So, but the Villanova 3 were ridiculous yesterday. Those guys were tremendous. Brunson has clearly taken his game to an MVP level. He is now at that level, and there's no question he's at that level. DiVincenzo had a big game early, which is what was needed, and then he guarded Maxey a good part of the game, which was a big part after Maxey. Obviously, the game 5, and I'll call it collapse, because there's no way you should blow a 6-point lead with 30 seconds to go, and you can't use another word for it.
I hit a 34-foot shot, though.
Yeah, but he never should have been able to take the 34-foot shot. He should have fouled him beforehand. There's no way he should have fouled on the 3 before that to give him a 4-point play either, right? So those are just failed execution and maybe failed coaching and communication. But look, big win. Hart had the big 3 at the end. They left him alone. He hit it. And look, great win. Indiana's a whole different matchup, right? As you've seen, Mike, you're going from a team that was a more walk-up team to Indy loves to run, right? Indy's going to basically get out in the open court. I'm going to attempt to make this series into a track meet and use guys like Halliburton and Turner and other guys to basically make this series into a track meet. And Thibodeau is going to attempt to basically play more of a slow-down half-court game. So it's going to be interesting contrast in styles. But, yeah, as a Knicks fan, look, the Garden gets several more home games, right? And now they got to kind of have to figure out how they're going to manage that. I know Knicks are Monday, Wednesday. They just announced that surprisingly, the series on Sunday opens at 4 p.m., which is a pretty crappy time. But I think they're probably hedging their bets in case there's one of the games out west that goes to a game 7, and they need to put it at night, and they want to have it for either 7 or 8 o'clock. So that's probably their hedge, as opposed to waiting last minute to set the time, which honestly
4 o'clock's great. It works great for me. I get home early.
Good for you. I'm just saying, as a Knicks fan, I'd prefer 8 o'clock. As a Rangers fan, I'd like 8 o'clock better.
This is a hockey show. Get to the hockey.
Yeah, but
so again, I'm a little surprised they did it at 4 p.m. But again, as we're going to discuss, right, part of it is there's two potential game 7s out west that probably drive the schedule being set.
Well, that means, Russ, we're going to have to find a guest for Sunday, because our guest will not, if it's a 4 p.m. start for Hurricanes Rangers, that means he won't be available at the time that we thought. So we may
neither will I. We'll have to switch the time.
Okay. Let's just say this. There could be overtime, and what I'm saying? It's like, if there's overtime, then he's not going to be available, even if we move the show to 10 o'clock. So,
Yeah, I might be home by 10.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Well, we'll start the show here. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, May the 3rd, 2024.
I'm Jan Levine.
Russ Cohen from NHLDraftBuzz.com.
And thanks for reminding me we have to do the lottery simulator. And this is and I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. And we may be joined by Eklund at some point. So we'll save what I'm sure he's going to regale us with, which is his, him and the Buzztron both saying, "I knew the Toronto Maple Leafs would win." Yeah, okay. So we'll hold off on the Leafs-Bruins talk until Ack gets here. So let's start with this. We'll get to the previews of Game 7, 2 games tonight, or Game 6s, potential Game 7s on Sunday if Nashville wins and if Vegas wins. But the news came out this afternoon, Jan. Andrew Gross tweeted out the end of season availabilities for the Islanders. And shock of all shocks, Lou Lamoriello says, "I'm coming back, folks." And Patrick Waugh obviously is coming back. And I said to Russ, and no disrespect to Lou, but the moves that he made this year, I don't think made the Islanders better. They still have the same issues that they've had for the last few years. This is an organization that right now is in a crossroads. They have good players. They've brought in good players, but I think they've also misallocated some of their funds. And I don't know if Lou is the right guy to make the decisions that this team needs to make. But what are your thoughts on the Islanders and where they're going?
So, I mean, you've been saying that for a couple of years now, Mike, and we've all been saying that, right? So we've talked a lot about, especially the contracts, right? JG Peugeot getting the 4 years, 20 mil, and being a third line center at $5 mil a year, right? Look, Pierre Engvall had a decent series this past round, but we thought that the extent of the contract, especially the length of it, was more than surprising. You look at the fourth line in terms of how long they've been extended. Ryan Pulock most certainly has not developed in the manner I think a lot of us were expecting. Right. And the problem is, I think also, if you look at the pipeline of what's coming up within the system, there's a dearth of offensive guys that are really in that system. I mean, maybe
what pipeline?
Right. Yeah. Maybe. I mean, again, they drafted Roddy. Roddy obviously was traded. I don't think he's done anything and really panned out for Vancouver yet in terms of it.
He'll be fine. Yeah.
Right. Oliver Wahlstrom clearly has plateaued from maybe what was expected to a certain extent. His offensive game is certainly not.
If they trade him, he'd do something.
Right. So, but again, you're going to get pennies on the dollar to an extent because he's a depressed value at this point in time. Horvat and Barzal had a good year. Kyle Palmieri had a very surprising, very good year. The 29 goals, I think, was not something anybody expected. Brock Nelson, honestly, is the most consistent guy on that roster and has been for years. What I do think you're going to have an interesting dilemma now is Ilya Sorokin did not have a good year at all, right? And clearly he, given the contract that he's now basically starting, is most certainly the future of that lineup and that roster. But Semyon Varlamov was their better goalie down the stretch.
Yeah, and it's Patrick not that big a deal for next year. It's really not.
Yeah, but Waugh had showed confidence in Varlamov down the stretch, partially based upon history. I'm sure having an impact.
But their budget's already set, right? Like, it doesn't matter that much.
Well, okay, I'll grant Jan's point because Varlamov was the better of the two goalies, but it was more, I think, the factor that Lane Lambert burned Sorokin out. They played him so much early on in the season because they were so far behind that they thought they needed to play him. And then by the time Waugh got in there and he wasn't playing very well, he had to go to Varlamov because Sorokin was just – I think he was gassed. Now, I think he'll go in with an open mind. This upcoming training camp, we know Sorokin is one of the 3 or 4 best goaltenders in the league. I mean, they are in trouble, Jan, if he's lost it and he doesn't get back to what he was last year.
Yeah, and again, it quite possibly he was burnt out, but they need to improve the offense around them, right? And which is something they're going to have to do, and part of that is how much funds are going to be available to be able to sign potential free agents or bring in more offense, which is clearly a crying need. I mean, the blue line to an extent is set. I mean, you have Pulock and you have Pelech, right? And those guys are kind of set. Dobson, who was hurt down the stretch, was a massive loss in that series against Carolina. And he's clearly the number one, has morphed into a guy who potentially could be a Norris Trophy candidate down the road because he is playing both sides of the ice and he's offensive, but he's moved into he's a solid blue liner defensively. The question becomes behind that, right? Who is the 4 through 6 defenseman?
Well, they're going to have to re-sign roster. Riley they'll probably have to give like $3 million.
That seems to be the general sweet spot for Lamoriello is $3 million.
To give Mike Riley $3 million?
They don't really have a choice, Mike. Like, Salo hasn't really developed. They got guys like Chalowski and the other Sebastian Aho and Bortuzzo. Like, none of these guys, Bortuzzo, they've got to bring in Mike Riley or they're screwed. Like, they don't have a choice. So that's where an extra $2 million is going to go. If it were me, don't bring back Clutterbuck. Leave him alone. If you have to bring back Matt Martin, just make Matt Martin take the absolute minimum that you can give him because at this point he should be happy that he's on a team still and pony up the rest of that money and get at least one solid offensive player because they're still going to have to put. I mean, again, this is a team loaded with $5 million players that you can't do anything with. Pajot's still one of them.
Well, I don't know. Cap Friendly's probably got much better sources than I do. They have the cap projected at $87.7 million. It could be
which is what we expected. That's basically what was announced last year, that it was going to probably be in that range, I think.
Right, but it could be a little higher, a little lower. But let's just take that as a benchmark. So they have the Islanders with a little over $5.5 million in cap space, with 4 unrestricted free agents on the blue line: Riley, Bertuzzo, Ahos, and Robin Salo. 4 unrestricted free agents at forward: Clutterbuck, Martin, Carson Kuhlman. These are Brian Pino. These are guys who are, if at any play, the other 2 just played minor roles. And 4 restricted free agents at forward: Wallstrom, Holmstrom, Kyle McLean, who was pretty much a 13th forward, and Ruslan Isakov. I don't know how many games he played. So most of their roster is under contract.
Yeah, but they'll probably. Well, I shouldn't say this. I would trade Cizikas. I think there's a market for him. Will they? I don't know.
Yeah, $2.5 million isn't going to. I mean, is he declining? Yes.
Well, it'll help you because that'll be your extra money for Riley, and then at least you can go get another forward.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Jan, it's like they have to find a way. Maybe take a guy.
It's Anders Lee. Honestly, it's Anders Lee. They have to try to. I mean, again, he's their captain. Clearly, his game has regressed a little bit. He's no longer the scoring threat that he once was. But the problem is you're not finding a buyer for him for 2 more years at $7 million, unless you're going to eat
buyout on Lee, Mike.
Substantial chunk of it.
On Lee?
Yeah.
A buyout would be, he's got
4 years, first of all, right?
Yeah, he's got 2 more years at $7 million. He's got a modified no trade. Buyout would be 2.875, 4.225. Then it drops to 1.725. So you're saving
4.2 mil this year. That's a substantial amount of money.
But then the next year, not great. Then it's after. Like, I don't know if it's not a bad idea. I don't know. I'd have to sleep on that one.
I mean, remember, if the cap goes up again the following year, right? That 4.2 million hit is blunted a little bit by the cap rising again, right? But they need to sign bottom 6 guys. They need to sign other guys for the roster. You look at kind of who they got, right? Barzal, Horvat, Nelson, Palmieri is clearly their top 2 lines of 2. Still need wingers for each line. Lee is one of them. Engvall right now is probably your second line winger, but he's more suited to be a third line winger as opposed to a second line winger. And you don't have really anybody in your system right now who you can plug and play into a top 6 role at all.
Yeah, and
Holmstrom was the only one that he's up there. So
and you have the specter, and maybe they can't be concerned of worrying about this right now, but you got Dobson only for 1 more year at $4 million, and he's probably an $8.5 to $9 million.
Oh yeah, it's coming.
It's coming. So you're going to have to get that now. Okay, to me, I would try, because he's coming off a good year. I would try to trade Palmieri. I know he had a great year.
He's too old. Nobody wants him.
Well, with 1 year left in his contract, Russ, coming off
5.8, something like that.
5. Yeah, he's 5.
Yeah.
But the problem here is that they have so many holes and so many roster spots to fill with so little cap space.
He actually provided offense. That is the problem.
He had 29 goals this year.
Right. And the thing is that, okay, so, you say you open up $7 million or $4 million if you buy out Lee, or if you find somebody you can trade him to, or you trade Palmieri. You've got 3 forwards that are your main guys in Barzal, Horvat, and Nelson. And then you've got, 6-7 other forward spots to fill and 3-4 defensemen. You can't fill that all. And you have
I got an idea. Here's a trade. Retain some salary, send Lee to St. Louis for Justin Falk, because I'm sure they would love to get rid of him too. And on the Islanders, you know what? They could use Falk, and then they wouldn't have to sign Riley.
I don't think they're going to sign Riley, especially if it's $3 million.
Oh, I think they are. They're hot on him, Mike.
Wow. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think he's an okay defenseman. I don't think he's a top 4 or
No,
and you got to remember Mayfield. I mean, I'm assuming Mayfield is coming back.
He has a fractured ankle. He said he'd be fine. But the thing is,
right, which is another $3 million salary.
Right. But he even scored a goal in the playoffs, Riley. Like, he's coming back.
And honestly, if you ask any Islander fan, they would literally like to punt Mayfield to the next moon landing because they can't stand that guy. They view him as a turnover machine and somebody that they need to get rid of off that blue line.
Maybe with Law, he'll be better though. I give him a chance. I would.
I mean, they were hot and bothered for him last year when he was, to sign him to that long-term deal. And Russ, I mean, I look at the prospects. I know that Matthew Maggio was the OHL MVP last year. But other than that, I don't see anybody that like really stands out in terms of like a no doubt, no brainer prospect.
Well, let me look, Mike. No offense. No, I'm kidding.
No.
I mean, again, the other problem is UBS Arena is not a destination right now, right? And that's part of it as well, right? So, and I'm going to speak pedantically because I live out here, right? The Lighthouse Project, people joke about it, would have been a huge success, right? And it got squashed by the politics that are out here. And the Coliseum, that was a place that was a destination, right? The fan base, first of all, was liked going out there a heck of a lot better than going to Elmont. I can tell you that. I know people that hate going to Elmont. The traffic is a nightmare, both the entrance and the egress, both getting in and out in terms of it. I can tell you that from an attraction perspective, I'm not quite sure if it's had the desired effect in terms of now, granted, having the facility out here as opposed to going to Brooklyn and being able to practice out here at the Northwell Health Arena is clearly better, but then that necessarily hasn't become an attraction per se in terms of bringing people out, right? So, and we've talked about Lamoriello, right? He's got very set in his ways. Whether or not that's kind of also playing an impact in terms of the ability to attract people, that could be a potential concern as well. Wah, I think, will help because I do think Wah's got the name recognition. Obviously, he's clearly got the energy, and what we've seen, he's got the passion associated with it, and clearly he's a guy that's well respected. But from an organization top-down perspective, I'm not quite sure if they necessarily have the sustenance that's needed to be able to start bringing in guys. And clearly, somebody's got to get to Lamoriello and say, stop giving out 6-year contracts for $18 million and figure out a better way to sign players.
Yeah, they're not drafting well either. I mean, I like Danny Nelson. I like Quinn Finley. I like Isaiah George. After that, there's not much else around that I really like. And that's another thing. They probably need to revamp their scouting because they don't have a lot of first-round picks because Lou ended up trading them all. That's what's hurting them is they don't have anybody to really, like you said, replenish. So whatever.
Well, Lou seems to fall back on his, he knew Paul Murray from the Devils. He knew Engvall from the Leafs. I can just imagine him making a trade with Detroit and getting Justin Hall. That I'm sure that'll solve all the problems. Okay,
you're gonna need bottom six guys, Mike. Right? You're to regurgitate and re-sign the guys that you had as much as they were longtime Islanders. Doesn't make sense unless Russ said they're going to come at a minimum, right? You're not signing them for a high dollar. But if you look at the contracts where Martin was making. Martin was at 1.5, Clutterbuck at 1.7, right? The minimum this year is going to be about 1.1. So it's not as if both of them were substantively over what the minimum is in terms of a contract for the NHL.
Yeah, but at this point, I'll pay one of them 1.1, and I need the other one to be gone.
Right.
And
my view is probably going to be the problem is Martin is more injury prone, but he's probably more impactful than Clutterbuck.
He's the Long Island guy too. Like they want him.
Right.
Around.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think it's more the limitation of the type of player that they are now at this point in their career. So let me, before X is going to join us in a few minutes, there's a lot of talk in the wake of the LA Kings being eliminated by the Edmonton Oilers again, which I saw that coming.
You didn't have to really think that hard about that.
No. I mean, I think that was the only team that Edmonton could really dominate in the first round. I think they would have had trouble with Vegas, a lot of trouble with Vegas had they played them.
I agree.
But now the talk is coming out of potential maneuvers that the Kings are going to make. I thought maybe Rob Blake was in danger, but I know that Elliot Friedman said that they have very, very patient and loyal ownership, which I think is code for probably Blake is safe.
Shouldn't be, but I guess he is. I don't like what Rob Blake's done. He's not had goaltending for 2 years now.
Right.
You gave up Quick, and Quick revitalized himself. You at times could play well defensively, but then again, they've made some of these trades where you did trade away a Brock Faber. I get it.
But you got Fiala. At least you got Fiala in that deal.
Fiala, so that's why I'm saying that one I could sort of live with. Dubois, what the hell are they going to do with him?
Well, that's the thing. And here's the here's the thing. When you're talking about the goaltending situation, that's on Blake, because Blake didn't go out and trade for or sign a goaltender that was in free agency.
Right.
He didn't. Well, wait. He did not retain Korpisalo, who had a good playoff last year for them. Yes. He went out, took the cheap way out, and signed Cam Talbot, who for 6 weeks was great and then sucked the rest of the year. So their downfall this year is directly correlated to Rob Blake and his failings as a general manager.
No question.
So now the talk is, and this is what what Elliot Friedman brought up on their podcast the last couple days, is the possibility, and it's being leaked out there, that they may buy out Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Yeah, it's not happening.
I don't know about that, because
I talked to some people about it. It was leaked out by a weird source. It wasn't actually, because I contacted them this morning, and they said flat out no. I mean, there's a whole crazy thing that you're gonna probably get into about it, which is really interesting. Continue with what you're saying, because at least what they said, and things can always change.
I mean, I'm with you. I don't think they should, but I think they need to have a moment with him and tell him just how much he is failing at his job.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether they should or shouldn't, honestly. But Mike, tell him what the scenario is, because it is pretty crazy.
Yeah. So and we've seen this before in this league. The most recent example, I think, was Cody Hodgson. Players who are under the age of 26, they get bought out for 1/3 instead of 2/3. It's still the same length of, so whatever you have left in terms of term, it's double the amount. But with anybody over the age of 26, it's 2/3 of the remaining salary. In this instance, it'll be 1/3. But he's making $8.5 million times 7 years, so it would be a 14-year cap hit. But most of it is in the less than $2 million range.
Who signed him to that deal, Mike?
Oh, gee, a guy named Rob Blake. Oh boy. But
who also engineered the trade to get him as well.
But here's the interesting part of this, and I love this. So he turns 26.
Yeah, this is good.
On June the 24th.
Yeah.
Depending on the length of the Stanley Cup final, remember, the buyout window starts 48 hours after the last game of the Stanley Cup final. The last game of the Stanley Cup final, if it goes to 7 games, is June the 24th. So they would not be able to buy him out if the Stanley Cup final goes 7 games. But
that's a crazy rule.
Yeah, but if it ends on the 21st, then they'd have a day to make and I'm sure they'll have already made the decision. But they'll be praying that whoever plays whoever in the Stanley Cup finals.
Either way, it's going to be it's going to be a nice birthday for PLD. Either way.
Yeah,
I mean, the buyout's interesting because like you said, that's the 1/3 salary thing. That's completely doable. I mean, it's going to be 15 years. Paying him at like $1.2 million a year or something like that, right, Mike? It's something like
it's Bobby Bonilla all over again. I mean,
it is Bobby Bonilla.
Oh, it's not only Bobby Bonilla. We stopped already bringing.
I know. Jim.
Let's go Rick DiPietro. How about that, Rick DiPietro?
Yeah, DiPietro still getting paid.
That's a compliance buyout. It doesn't count.
Okay.
There's not a.
Let's just wait. I don't think in any way, shape, or form we'd say PLD even earned 1/10 of his salary this year.
No, but Jam, but he's only 25. You can't. You gotta
Okay, using the argument of him being only 25, when you forced your way out of locations to get somewhere and basically ended up pushing in the comments that you've made, I'm sorry, you no longer can fall back on how old he is. You have to fall back that he failed to live up to his contract. Period. End stop.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I can't discard him. I wouldn't do it.
So here is the. I'll just be brief on this. Here is the buyout. If they do it. The first 2 years, 1.6, 1.5, then 2.5, 3.7, 3.8, 3.8, 2.8, and then 1.1 for the remaining 7 years. So it's. I mean,
1.1 is negligible, right? I mean, it's probably immaterial by that point.
It's basically an annuity for him,
right?
Yeah, it is. It becomes, and he'll sign someplace else. Somebody will go for him. We'll give him a chance. I mean, he's only 25, so someone's going to say, "Hey."
But Eck, then that team will realize in 2 years that he's a
Well,
multi.
they're not signing him to a long-term contract.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be an 8-year deal.
He's getting like a 1 year. He's probably getting like a
2,
1 year.
maybe 2, maybe. Dan,
maybe.
He's a French Canadian Alexander Semin for the rest of his career.
Hey, you know what? Speaking of French Canadian, you know who might take a chance at them?
Absolutely. If I'm Montreal, I take a
And
chance.
Montreal has resurrected guys who basically needed resurrection. So
And it's the perfect place to put a French Canadian who's not able to handle pressure well. I mean, that's exactly where they. I mean, I don't know.
St. Louis has had a way with players, so
yeah, St. Louis did good, but that's a hell of a lot of pressure on.
I know
PLD to put him into Montreal like that. Let's not be fine with it. I mean, I'm still drum that I was in Tampa to do some things with family health related things, and so I was down there and I did get to talk to some people about the Lightning and I want to talk about that a little bit, Mike. But it's Stamkos Toronto thing I'm writing about tomorrow. So continue.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, if it's Montreal and they didn't want to buy him out, you could, if you were LA, trade him for Brendan Gallagher or trade him for Josh Anderson, who both have 3 years left in their contracts.
Yeah.
So good. But okay, so we saved it for you, Eck.
Thanks so much. I was really hoping you did, Mike, because last night I texted Mike what I thought was perfectly reasonable, Russ. Thanks for standing. Thanks for chiming in, Russ. God, you guys are wimps. The reality is, did you not agree with me, Russ?
No, I couldn't agree with that.
Really?
Yeah.
No, because
so anybody who's watched the game yesterday, and you know when Toronto is playing without Matthews, and when they're playing this defensive style, Edmondson suddenly becomes way more important for them. All right, for whatever that is. And last night he made 2 blocks, one with about a minute and a half go, where it was Pasternak. It was a goal. Like it was Pasternak. He had might have been able to get across with him with the save of the playoffs, but it was Pasternak. Edmondson makes the save. And to me, that block right there, because they score with 1.5 minutes left, Mike, I think we can all agree they're going to score again. and you know the way things work with Toronto, right? So that save there, I mean, the only way they scored and didn't score again is because they scored with 0.1 seconds left, right? They were going to score again if they got a goal with any time to go it. And that play right there to me was well worth the, what was it, draft pick we're talking about?
Oh my God, a third and a fourth round.
It's not. A third and a fourth round draft pick may have just gotten you to the next round of the playoffs.
No. Okay, Eck, even if they win on Saturday, no, it's not. The only time it's worth it is if you sign the guy.
Right.
Because then it's an asset that you have for 2 or 3 or 4 more years. You're giving up future lottery tickets for a guy that you're going to let walk out the door for nothing.
Fantasy hockey when you say that, Mike. This is
give me another Joel Edmondson moment. Like you've got one. Great.
No, there were several in that game. And as I think someone said in the chat room, Vespa said in the chat room, he was good last night. And I agree with what he's saying here.
He was great. So last night he was good. Okay.
Last night he had to be good. And if he wasn't good last night, the reason you get one of these guys, the reason you go out and make these trades is so that they save you potentially in the playoffs at the last second to make. And this is what they did. He actually saved the Maple Leafs. You know, and Maple Leafs are done today if not for Edmondson. And I think now the Maple Leafs have a very good chance at winning this in 7. So
there's the curse. No, but
I just love that. That optimism is fantastic. I think you should run with that optimism. You should talk to as many Leaf fans as you can. Yeah. With that optimism, I'm sure you could turn them around.
Yeah. Here's why. Okay, here's why Game 7.
He shared that optimism with Hillary Clinton before her election in 2016. Oh boy. But okay.
All right, I'll tell you why Toronto's going to win Game 7, but we'll get there in a second.
Let me. Okay, because this is the 2 of their better defensemen in this playoff have been Ilya Lyubushkin and Joel Edmondson.
Yeah,
I'm not disputing their value as depth defensemen and role players. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you're trading for them, if you're trading 4 draft picks for them, then these are guys that you should want to keep around.
All right.
No, they're not over.
What draft picks did they get for Lyubushkin?
I think it was a 3 and a 5.
So basically the same thing: 3 and a 4, 3 and a 5.
Yeah.
Right. And everyone else thought that went out and gave up a 1 or whatever to get their defenseman. So 2 to get their defenseman. So you only give up a 3 and a 5.
Yeah, but this is a team that has no draft picks because
Kyle Dubas,
they don't have any. They don't have a first in 25. They don't have They don't have seconds in 24, 25, and 26. Now they don't have thirds and fourths and fifths. Okay, the only thing that they're doing that's smart is they're going out and signing college free agents who we all think are pretty decent. But you need draft picks to fuel the engine.
No, you don't.
They're not a Stanley Cup contender.
Oh, look, wait. I just uncovered an email from Eck. Can't tell what year it says. That assist from Chris Gratton is why that contract was great.
No. Russ, very different situations, okay? I mean, come on. Toronto needs draft picks. Toronto needs to win. They need to win.
They're not going to.
They can't sit around and get draft picks. You guys have been so great in covering for me while I've been out. I don't want to yell at everybody right away, but I'm sorry. The reality is that they need to win.
Yeah, but the problem is, that if they win this series, they're going to lose to Florida.
Why is that a problem?
If they lose, and if they don't lose to Florida,
you shouldn't worry about Florida. Don't even.
They're going to lose. They might lose to Florida. They might beat Florida. Who knows?
No, they're not. And if they beat Florida, they're not beating the Rangers or Carolina.
Well, you shouldn't worry about that. You shouldn't even be talking about that.
Can they beat
what you
anybody?
should be talking about is, can they win the next game?
Right. Agreed. And this draft pick was made to get them past Boston. This trade was made. They knew basically. They were going to play
up until an hour before the end of the season. They thought they were playing Florida, but they
knew they were playing Florida or Boston. Okay, so that they knew that.
They knew that.
Okay, they knew that all along. Basically, unless they tanked, even then they would end up probably playing one of the two teams. So the reality was, they needed more defense to stop Boston or Florida, and they needed more defense, and they needed somebody who could stop, who can make a play when the game's on the line, when you're holding a lead. And that is something this team has never, ever in my lifetime had.
Okay, take what you just said as true, and maybe that's true. Okay, then they're going to need that type of defenseman next year, right?
Sure.
So they should want to sign those guys.
You don't think they can?
Well, but the problem is that those guys in free agency will make more than they're probably willing to pay for. So then they just threw away 4 draft picks for nothing. For 20 games at the end of the regular season, and for a playoff that you and everybody knows they're not winning the Stanley Cup. So don't do it.
No one knows anyone who's still playing is not winning the Stanley Cup, Mike.
I do. I know all.
All right. Well, okay. Sorry.
Here's the funny thing. Here's the funny thing. He's only been averaging 2 blocks a game. That was his first plus game. He hasn't actually been playing very well at all. But that game, he made a big block. I give it to you.
It's not that he. Listen again. It's not
the quality of the player. It's
the moment he made it.
Right. So that's a scorching hot take. That's what that is.
The moment he made it.
That's how we treated it.
Matters. Okay. The moment he made it matters. And listen, it's easy to sit there and say Mike's your hero. Whoever, Randy.
Randy said that.
It's easy to sit there and say that, but the reality is, according to Mike, no one should play any more games because shows who's going to win the Stanley Cup, and that just doesn't happen that way. We know that. The reality is, right now, this is what Toronto has going for them. They have not had any of the Game 7s before against Boston recently.
Okay,
they are the underdog, which is absolutely something that they have never been.
They weren't the underdog in 2013. They weren't the underdog in 2018. The only one that you could say that weren't an underdog was 2019, and that was shot when Nazem Kadri had his brain cramp 2.0.
But if I recall right, if I remember this, they were ahead 3-2. Boston tied their series 3-3, most of them at least, and then it went
in 2018.
Right, so
but entering the series, they were the decided.
Okay, they were a slight underdog this year. I'm just saying. Okay, I'm going to say that even if they were an underdog, they were down 3-1. The second you're down 3-1, you're a major underdog. Okay, and that just goes. Then you're playing with house money. You're playing, and that they've done perfectly. They got a break probably with Matthews being hurt in a way because it's helped them.
Oh my God.
It's helped them focus in. There's no question they're playing better defense.
Okay. They've been forced to play a game that they're totally not built to play.
They're doing it against one of the better teams in the league pretty damn well.
Well, okay.
So far.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying they can do it. I'm not saying that you should just trade away Matthews now. But you know what I'm saying. This situation, maybe they're learning right now how to play that defense. And when Matthew comes back in, maybe they can play that defense with Matthews in there.
There's
Or
a
maybe
difference.
Boston will be more aggressive at home. They just weren't aggressive yesterday.
Or maybe Boston will be terrified, which is the other reality is this. Boston's the favorite and has been the favorite for 2 years now in a row and had lost a 3-1 series last year. It could potentially lose a 3-1 series this year to Toronto, which is even worse in their fans' minds. So the reality is
they're mentally hurting a little bit, but I don't think they're terrified. No.
I think that the Leafs should be the looser team going into Game 7. They should be.
I don't think either team is loose.
Right.
I heard somebody refer to this series and this Game 7 as the battle of the chokers. And I think that's I wouldn't say that because I'm a professional, but I can understand why there would be people out there that would say that because the Bruins choked last year in Game 7 against Florida, and the Leafs have choked so many times that they have somebody ready to give them the Heimlich maneuver at every moment. So honestly, I predicted Boston in 7. I'm sticking with my prediction.
I predicted Toronto in 7. I'm sticking with my prediction. So
one of us will be right.
One of us will be right, and that's not. But one of us at least can admit that either team could win that Game 7, and that's me. I honestly can tell you that this either team can win that Game 7. Where you said they can't beat Boston, even if they lose to Boston, they can't beat Florida, and if they lose to Florida, they can't be the Rangers.
I said, and
Colorado or Nashville, whoever gets to the finals.
I do want to point out one thing, though. I want to say this. For all the people like Esmir and otherwise that say Montgomery should get fired, I don't believe he should get fired for 2 reasons. One is this is all post-Bergeron. Everybody was like, listen, they're going to stink for a while. They're not going to make the playoffs, whatever. Then they overachieved with Montgomery, but also still with a flawed roster. And they have a flawed roster down the middle, and they didn't do anything to correct that in this season. They did it last year. They got Zacha, but he's not a number 1 center. They don't have a number 1 center. They're missing big pieces. That's on Sweeney. That's not on the coach.
Yeah, I don't think
would not fire this coach. This coach is doing a very good job with the
Montgomery might be should have been thought of for the Adams. I mean, he had a hell of a.
I'll say that.
Won't be this good.
I'll say this. Do I think he should be fired? No. Do I think he will be fired if they lose? I think he might. I mean, I think it's probably.
To me, it's just idiotic.
If he's fired, it's because of a lot of things, and whatever.
It'll be because of Cam Neely. It'll be because of ownership.
Yeah, I mean that organization does tend to try to find scapegoats, so it's possible.
They do.
But I'm going to say right now, the way I've seen the Leafs play the last 2 games, I'm questioning their head coach a ton, because if this team has the ability to do that, why haven't they done that? I mean, why have they not? I mean, he just simply, it's like he has not coached them at all, in my opinion, until now. And suddenly he's coaching.
I'll tell you, the only thing I can tell you is, and I'm not going to blame this on Keith because I think he's tried to get them to play desperate before. I think because Matthews is out, like this is the most desperate that they have ever played.
Right.
And you better play this way. Otherwise, after Game 4, this team was toast, and everybody was ready to basically throw them into Lake Ontario. And they go to Boston. They play a near perfect road game. They have a goaltender who can actually make a stop when your team needs to be made. Which, how many times this year have I said Joseph Walsh should be the number 1 goaltender, and the fact that he got hurt in December and they had to go to Samsonov, and Samsonov was the better of the 2 going into the playoffs, and I understood why they had to go to Samsonov to start the series because Wall had not played well since he came back from the injury. But after game 3, I said they should consider going to Wall, and they waited until Game 4, until after 2 periods, when he cost them the game in Game 4. So they finally went to the younger goaltender. They're playing better defensively. They've had to play better defensively because the guy who scored 69 goals this year is not in their lineup, and they've actually had players who nobody expected to, like Matthew Nyes and Jake McCabe and Simone Benoit, step up. And they finally took out that useless fire hydrant in Ryan Reeves in Game 6.
I'm telling you who's going to step up for Boston.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to do it yesterday. He had some moments. Jake DeBrusk. I actually think he will be the guy that steps up for them because
he's a Leaf killer. He's a Leaf killer. I'm not.
He could be, Russ. I mean, he's such a crazy case, because
he usually has one or two of these.
Yeah,
games.
he does.
Yeah.
He could step up. McAvoy could step. I mean, there's some guys that
McAvoy, he already put his stamp on that game, man.
Jesus
I know, but he's got some stuff to score actually.
He's a monster. I mean,
honestly, he's got to score right now to me. Like McAvoy,
well, I mean, he's
not a scorer though. He's just,
I know he's not. It's not fair to him. But
Lindholm is the guy who should score, and he's done nothing.
Yeah, but this is the issue, Jan, and I look, and this is the reason why, like 2 months before the playoffs, I said, the Leafs should say quietly, we want Boston, not because Boston is bad, because they're not bad, but they didn't fill the holes at the deadline up the middle. They tried to get Lindholm, they tried to get the other players, they couldn't trade Allmark, but they're weak up the middle. Coyle and Zacha are not top 6 centers. They have 2 great players at forward, Marchand and Pasternak. And the Leafs have done one thing effectively. They've beaten Pasternak into the ground. Now, does that mean that he's not going to score 3 goals in Game 7? No, because he's great.
No, but he doesn't look like he's sleeping. I think he's got a shoulder.
He's got an injury.
He's got dark circles under his eyes. Yeah. He doesn't look good.
He's got an injury. But that didn't stop Montgomery from calling him out, Russ.
I know.
He called
well,
him
you're going to call out your best player, right? I mean, if you're going to call out anybody. Look, they came within a Trent Frederick shot that just missed the post that was wide open of being tied 1-1 with about 3 minutes to go in that game. I mean, Toronto played a great road game. They played they didn't play a conservative game, right? Because they had offensive chances. Marner had some chances. Nylander obviously had chances, but you got a very lucky goal at the end of the second period with McAvoy basically screening Swayman on a deflection, and then you got the breakaway after Frederick missed the wide post that Nylander ended up beating Swayman 5-hole. I mean, look, the big boys have to step up, right? Irrespective if you're injured or not. But we talked a lot about this whole year, right? Our expectations for Boston's coming into the new year was fairly low because we weren't big believers in Coyle or basically their top 2 centers being their top 2 centers after you've just lost Bergeron and Krejci, right? But exactly. Coyle had a surprisingly very good year, and Zacha had a good year. They were supposed to make moves at the deadline that got the kibosh put on it, partly with Allmark playing an impact on it. Now they won the series and they were up 3-1. Look, Toronto basically was playing with house money, right? Once Matthews was out, that changed the whole tone and tenor to a certain extent also, because at that point in time, you're expected to lose, right? Whatever happens, but you can then hang your hat on saying, well, we didn't have our number 1 option. And you now maybe they're playing looser and freer, and they are playing a different, little tighter style than what we've expected. But look, if Boston can't get energized playing in front of their home crowd in front of a Game 7, that's going to be on Montgomery and the team. And Montgomery's the guy who's going to basically take the fall if they blow a 3-1 lead.
You know what happened? They had a really good record, and some people artificially put them in the same vein or same league as the Rangers, the Hurricanes, and they weren't. They weren't as good as those teams, regardless of what their record was, and it's showing now. They weren't going to get to the Stanley Cup no matter what they did this year, and they've met their match, and maybe they'll win.
Right, but it's one thing if you've lost in 5 games to Toronto, and Toronto was the better team. It looks a lot better optically than you blowing another 3-1 lead, Russ.
Yeah, another word
there. I don't deny that.
And just
that's where heads roll because you can't keep doing it, right? And that's where somebody's going to take the impact for it, and it's likely going to be the coach.
And that's why in Toronto, if they lose this series, even though they forced the 7th game, Keefe is probably toast. And Keefe, from what I heard, Keefe might be toast even if they get to the second round and they lose in the second round. But there's
a hard time believing that one, especially because of what we just saw. Because if he wins this round, he'll have something to do with it. Like it'll be the moves that players he put in the new lines he put together, things like that. That'll be.
But I don't think he's getting fired because of anything he's done tactically. I think he's getting fired because he's been there for 5 years and they haven't done anything. Right? And they haven't done anything.
But also, I mean, tactically, this is the most he's done in those 5 years. Like what you're seeing right now, this is the most impactful he's been. Like he has it's been a matter of, are we going to play Marner and Matthews here? That's a decision he's had to make, and everything else feels like it's not been there.
Gee, what a shock. They finally give him secondary players on top of that core 5 group last year, and they actually went around. And this year, they give him a decent supporting cast, and they might beat the Bruins. Gee, when you're not putting everything on 4 guys making $40 million, when you have no good goddamn goaltending, and you have 1 defenseman.
Why are we back on this? We got to move on.
Anyway,
let's
because we got to finish before 4 o'clock here.
I mean, listen. Here's the thing: is they're I mean, they might have a goalie now, which is great. Where they've been doesn't matter right now. Where they are is 1 game away from pulling from a 3-1 comeback, which is something that we haven't seen the Leafs do in a very, very, very long time. And probably I think the last time we did it was probably against the Flyers way back when. So
1 team wins, and then the loser goes to Palookaville. That's for both teams.
There you go, and it's true, right? So now tonight, the 2 games tonight. I want to talk about them real quick because we are running out of time. Of course, 7 minutes ago. Of these 2 series, let's go around the horn real quick. What team has the best chance of coming back from 3-2? Is it Nashville?
No, I think it's Vegas.
Or is it Vegas?
No,
I'd
I
say
think it's
Vegas,
Nashville.
but I think, look, Nashville should have won the game where Besser got the hat trick, right? I mean, that's the game, that's the killer that they should have been up. They should have been the team that's up 3-2 right now. So to me, that Vegas is the better team in terms of the 2 of them, but I would give Nashville a better shot because I just have this feeling Dallas has now found their sea legs. Wyatt Johnson has become a massive difference maker. Logan Stankoven has taken a step forward also. You look at the depth on that team, and look, Dallas was the #1 seed for a reason. They didn't look like it the first 2 games, but Ottinger has also found his game. Defensively, they're really good. Vegas is a great team. I just think if you're going to take a team that has a better shot, I view Vancouver as more vulnerable, for lack of a better term, than I do Dallas.
Their goalie in, Jan, that's one thing. They also have a history of sort of crumbling. Like Vancouver
they haven't gotten bad goaltending. That's the funny thing.
They haven't.
They haven't since the change. So that's why I don't think Vancouver will crumble.
I think Nashville has the better chance of coming back from 3-2 because of the goaltending.
I think they do, just because this Nashville team has shown like incredible resilience all year. This is what they do, and they're going against a team that has shown a lack of resilience. So you're talking about like 2 very different mindsets going into this.
Yeah, don't bet the house on UC Saros. You're going to lose everything.
Yeah, I know, but put an APB
He's
out.
never won anything, Mike.
No, I know.
No, I'm saying put an APB out on Elias Pettersson because he really hasn't.
He's injured. The guy's injured.
Yeah, he's playing hurt. He's injured. No question about it. He's playing hurt, and I think Pastrnak's playing hurt too. I really do. But I think that but everyone's playing hurt. It's the playoffs. The
playoffs are a game of attrition. We've said this all the time, right? The better team doesn't always win. At times, it's the teams that has the healthier bodies than the team that's the better team overall. It's a look at the Rangers in 2015, right? They probably should have beaten Tampa. They just had no defensemen because half their blue line was hurt.
If McDonough would have skated in that game, they might have won. But
all I can say is this, then I'll leave you guys on this because this is really last night after the game, I turned over to the Knicks-Sixers game. And I'm not a basketball fan at all, but there's a little bit of a story going on there, right? So then, because the Sixers won in game, we shouldn't have won in game 5 or whatever. I turned over to that game, and thank God hockey doesn't end the way basketball games end sometimes. Like that whole fouling thing back and forth.
Oh, it's awful.
It's so stupid.
And the last 5 minutes take 45 minutes.
And this great game turns into this weird foul shot competition. It's just, I mean, of all the things, hockey doesn't have anything like that. I mean, it's like,
thank God.
You're right. That really is a horrendous way to end games. And I mean, it's an exciting game, but it's not exciting to sit there and watch guys take foul shots. It's not exciting.
Oh, trust me, when your team has missed clutch free throws the last game, trust me, you're sitting there pacing, watching them.
I'm sure you were.
It's not exciting. Trust me, I'm sitting there praying, going, don't miss 7 free throws like you did in game 5.
No,
free throws, please.
I mean, it's exciting for Knicks and 76ers fans because everybody's pulling for that. But, the reality is, like, for an external fan like me, and my wife was even further along. I'm like, we should watch this end of this game. And I explained to her what happened in the game before. And I'm like, we should watch this. And she's like, okay. And she said, what's happening? And I'm like, yeah, this is what happens in basketball at the end of the game.
Well, really, I mean, this game was a lot less because only maybe the last 10, 15 seconds. Because
the
3 he hit came with like 24 seconds to go. So
a
little different.
The other one was worse than this, Jan?
Oh, yeah, different. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just I don't know. The NBA's got to figure something out on that. That's just horrendous. But I feel like they never will because it's become part of the game. Anyway,
I do want to say,
I'll ask you this question. Let's say Dallas advances, right? Let's per se they win. Mike and Russ, we both talked about before the series started that these two teams will beat the living tar out of each other, and the likelihood of the winner won't necessarily advance to either the Western Conference Finals or the finals. If Dallas wins Game 6, does your mindset change at all based upon the way how this series has gone?
For me, no.
No. I mean, the thing is though, and you know, unfortunately, and as a well-known Oilers lover, the fact that, you know, whoever wins this series comes up against the Colorado Avalanche, so it's going to be another bloodbath, and Edmonton will play a wounded Vancouver or Nashville. It just, you know, I mean, this is the wet dream for the NHL in terms of a Canadian team getting to the Stanley Cup final and Connor McDavid winning a Stanley Cup. But to most people, that's a nightmare.
You think Connor McDavid can beat the Rangers?
I don't know.
He's got a shot.
I do too, but I mean, Mike's
one of the best players in the league, so I give him a puncher's chance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, but anyway, that's it. Just
if Skinner is playing like he is right now, I give them a shot only because of how he's playing.
Yeah,
I think whoever they face, Rangers, Carolina, Florida, Toronto, Boston, are going to scheme against that line and try to shut them down, making the secondary options more important. But Skinner was the difference maker a lot in that first round. I mean, he was very good in that first round.
Oh yeah.
But in case he isn't, wait a second, the savior is there. Okay. Jack Campbell has been called up.
All right, we gotta go.
Oh, enough, Mike.
Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Enjoy the games tonight. Enjoy the games tomorrow night. Thank you, Jan, for jumping on. We, as always, very much appreciated. It's going to be fun, guys.
Powers are failing.
I think we're going to see a couple. Game 7s here. I think we're going to
fireworks for Mike in the background there. Nice effect, Mike.
No, we know we're going to see one. I think we're going to see. I think one of these games ends tonight. One doesn't. I think the Predators force a Game 7. That's my opinion.
It's possible. All right. See you guys.
Talk to you soon.